In this episode,
you could send them an email, you can send a letter. My advice would be go straight to court.
We've only had 80 complaints regarding air source heat pump.
And if it's cheap for a reason.
We would always ask that you do something formal, and it's a good old-fashioned letter.
However, Mars, I have been here before. We have installed a heat pump and the customer's expectations are completely different.
MCS don't really get involved in complaints. They will do.
and then the homeowner goes, well, how does this help me?
Well, she just says it's not working. That's no good for anybody, is it?
I wouldn't say it's an unreasonable complaint.
What might not bother me really could affect you.
Welcome to another episode of Homeowners Q&A. I'm your host Mars, and today we're tackling a crucial topic for any homeowner with a heat pump: what to do if you're facing an issue with a subpar installation. To help us navigate this topic, we're joined by Cathryn Wolfenden from HIES and Hassan Abdalla from Renewable Energy Services team. So whether you're currently facing issues or want to be prepared just in case, this episode will provide you with the essential knowledge for protecting your investment in a heat pump. But before we get started, we'd like to say a huge thank you to HIES for sponsoring today's episode. HIES is a consumer protection organization covering the installation of renewable energy and home energy efficiency products. By respecting, protecting, and educating consumers, their aim is to transform consumer protection within the home energy market. HIES also offers a wide range of support for renewable energy installers to ensure high service levels and standards to safeguard both installer and consumer. The installer benefits that HIES offers helps installers at every step, from setting up and registering a business in the sector right through to an annual review. So, Cathryn, we get a lot of DMs and a lot of messages on our forums from people that have had a subpar installation or what they perceive to be a subpar installation. And there seems to be a lot of confusion as to what that complaints process is, because there's quite a lot of moving parts. You've got consumer bodies, you've got certification bodies, you've got MCS. How is the complaints process structured? And what should a homeowner do to actually initiate a complaints process?
So in the first instance, they should always go back to their installer. So they should be the first point of contact. They will have, whilst they're a member of a code, they will have a robust complaints process in place. It's part of their code accreditation. So I'd always say that they would need to go back to their installer in the first instance. If that doesn't work, then they need to have a look at the paperwork and find out who their code is. There is only two. So there's HIES and then there's RECC. So any HIES members, we would ask them to contact customer service at HIES. Who'll give them the right information depending on what the complaint is. Sometimes for a technical issue, it's better to go to the certification body. They're the experts. HIES will, though, look at any complaint, and we have got the option of doing inspections, etc., to move that forward. They would have to evidence that they had actually give the installer a chance to put it right, first of all. There is a couple of caveats to that. If a customer contacted us to say that they can't get hold of the installer, they've been ringing, they've got no heating and hot water, we would circumvent that and likely just make that into a formal complaint and take that process forward from there.
The one thing that we've always seen time and time again is that if the installer was MCS accredited, it almost seems to be the case that you should contact your installer first, and if there's an issue, you contact MCS first. Is that correct?
No, MCS don't really get involved in complaints. They will do, but from my experience, the right way of doing it is always to contact your installer. We would always, if there was to contact HIES, we would always ask that you do something formal, and it's a good old-fashioned letter. We do get people saying, well, we're back to pigeon post. It's not. Let's just say that their complaints person is just complaints at wherever, and they have one person looking after that email box. If that one person is off, then who's going to pick it up? If there's only one person access that, by all means, follow it up with an email. But the best way to do it is a recorded letter in the post office, just following up your phone calls, and then we will ask for that evidence there. Like I said, there is some issues where we would circumvent that, and if a customer could prove that they'd sent multiple emails, we would probably look at it then. We're not set in stone as in, well, you've not sent a letter to the installer, so we're not going to help you. We're a little bit more fluid than that.
So Hassan, you guys are installers. So now what happens if a homeowner picks up the phone or sends you an email and says, look, we perceive our system to be a subpar installation? How do you guys actually assess that particular complaint?
The complaint is usually received by two forms. One is by email or potentially by letter. Essentially, once the complaint comes through, it's really important that we track that complaint from the start to ensure that we are effectively dealing with it and there's a timely manner to be able to deal with that complaint. When the complaint comes through, the first thing that we want to do is we need some more information. As you can imagine, for a homeowner who's not an expert, who's not an engineer, who doesn't really understand heating and hot water or electricals or plumbing, for them it's very new, because they would, if the system doesn't give them hot water or if it's not coming on, then all of a sudden they may start panicking straight away, thinking that it could be to do with the installation, but it could be to do with a variety of different things. The most important thing for us is that we want to speak with the customer, communicate with them effectively, and be able to get as many clear images as possible of exactly what the issue is. We would offer some troubleshooting steps remotely if this is possible. The best approach for us would be to try and resolve it remotely with the customer, to work with us and try and get this problem solved. Essentially, the complaints, once they're logged, it's up to us to have to deal with them quite effectively, because if we do not, then we do get a yearly audit from our regulators who look at our complaints trackers and make sure that at the end of this audit that we are dealing with these complaints effectively, and how many do we get and how fast do we deal with them as well.
I'm very careful about choosing my words for this because I always say, a perceived complaint. Now, how do you guys deal with an instance where there's an unreasonable customer? So how do you guys actually evaluate the level of that complaint? If somebody says, my system is running quite well, my house is warm, but I feel like I'm spending too much money on that. So how do you guys deal with something that is potentially unreasonable?
To be honest with you, for most homeowners, they've spent a lot of money on a product like this. They have set expectations that this product will give them X amount in terms of energy, heating, hot water. It's going to cost them X amount. This is important as well. The biggest issues that, installers face, or a lot of companies and homeowners face, is that they don't size these heat pumps correctly. They don't project actual usage costs of these pumps, and a lot of homeowners are left in the dark with these things. If you're dealing with a company that doesn't really have any finance or Section 75 protection or any validators in place, or regulators that are validating their contracts and checking what they're promising customers in terms of costs for running heat pumps and so forth, then you are going to be most likely to get complaints like this. I wouldn't say it's an unreasonable complaint, because essentially if the customer is paying more than what they've been promised on that contract, then it's fair enough. This is what we've put on the paper. It's very important for us as an installer to ensure that we do not overpromise and inflate figures and costings of how it costs to run a heat pump. However, Mars, I have been here before where, we have installed a heat pump and the customer's expectations are completely different to the outcome of the heat pump running. You have to really help the customer understand right down to a detail of why it's costing what it's costing to run. They need that person to sit there with them and really break it down, right down to every kilowatt hour that they use, how much it costs them per kilowatt hour, when do they heat up their hot water and their heating, and to be able to kind of make some changes to their lifestyles to make more use of the system. But things like the temperature, obviously we know that heat pumps run on an ambient temperature, but I have come across customers who have given us feedback after the heat pump has been installed that it's not hot enough, it's not warm enough as their central heating or their oil boiler was as well. Again, this is something that we have to kind of raise that expectation from the start, because from my point of view, is if you were being sold a product and you wasn't informed that this product isn't going to heat up to 29-30 degrees and your house isn't going to be really hot if you want it to be like this is more of an ambient temperature product, this is more related or directed to people that like this kind of a temperature, then at the end of the day, then you're going to be less likely to get issues like that. However, you do get unreasonable customers who think that, for whatever reason, just because their heat pump stopped working or, their hot water's gone off, they should be getting dealt with immediately. They should be put at the top of the line. And because of the fact that we've carried out this installation, and because of the fact that, we want to offer them a great service, they expect us to just drop everything and come straight around and try and fix the problem for them. It's all about trying to, manage these customers' expectations and helping them understand that these problems can be solved. We just want to work with you to solve these problems. And sometimes because the complaint is not as, I would say, important, so you have to prioritize the complaint. Sometimes, if I give you an example, if they've got no heating on hot water and it's the middle of winter, that would be a very high priority for us as a company. Alternatively, if the customer was vulnerable, of older age or something like that, then we would need to kind of prioritize their complaint a little bit more than the average customer, purely because we know that customer will be worse off with the issue. So it's important that we kind of prioritize these customers, and if the customers are not willing to work with us and are being unreasonable and not willing to send us images and so forth, this is where regulators like HIES really help us to try and get the problem resolved, because what we tend to find is that once the customer is annoyed with us, they're not willing to work with us anymore. So we really rely on regulators like HIES to help us solve these problems and help these customers understand whether their complaint is unreasonable or not.
There's never an unrealistic complaint, is there? Because what might not bother me really could affect you. What we find with heat pumps is that a lot of customers don't know what they've bought. They don't read the paperwork, they don't understand it. Those estimates that they give, and I know the MCS estimate now comes as kilowatts, which is much better than what it is for cost. Because on the back of COVID 2022, when the energy crisis happened, we had lots and lots of complaints from customers saying, well, they told me it was going to cost £600 a year, it's now costing £900. And to try and explain to them, yes, because when you were sold it, you were only paying 13 pence per kilowatt, you're now paying 30 pence pence per kilowatt. That did not sink in. So the fact now that it's done on kilowatts rather than on pence per kilowatt is so much easier to understand. Again, down to education, customers don't really understand how to use it. So it's not a gas boiler. You can't come in at 12 degrees from work, stick it up to 21 and expect it to get to 21 in an hour like your gas boiler would have done. It doesn't work like that. So no complaint for me is ever unrealistic. It just depends on how you look at it, but it is about explaining to customers how to get the best out of it, what they've actually bought and what to do with it going forward, and that there is help, there's things that can be done. Sometimes there is a genuine issue. It's costing more because it's not been installed correctly or it's not been designed correctly, but generally it is down to an understanding of how it works.
Planning to install an air source heat pump? Then get your copy of Bodge Buster. It's packed with must-ask questions, real homeowner insights, and a practical guide for a smoother installation. Available in print and on Kindle. Link in the description. We've always said that our heat pump is kind of a real average install. It's not great, it's not amazing, it's kind of really down the line. And it took us about 2 years to basically 2 winters to work through the issues that we had to try and figure out what was actually happening, where the areas were poor, what things weren't working properly. How long a time do you give a homeowner to actually be able to, in inverted commas, complain if their system initially, when they switch from a boiler, it runs very differently, that they're trying to figure, and they know that it runs differently. So they may be trying to just, get their heads around it, but maybe 2 winters down the line, they actually realize, hang on, there is still an inherent problem with the system. It's not operating as well as it should be. Can you still go back to an installer after 2 years and basically ask them to come back and have a look at something that you've done maybe 2 winters ago, Hassan?
Yes, absolutely. Of course you can. So as obviously with all installations regarding any home improvement products, you will get a insurance-backed workmanship guarantee from the installer. And what that basically means is that for that workmanship guarantee, that we have to ensure that that heat pump would work or the product would work how we said it would work as well. At any point, if the homeowner feels that that product isn't working how we promised it would, then yeah, absolutely, we would be assisting the homeowner to try and find out why they feel it's not working like it should do. I understand where you're coming from because it can take time. Like for example, even when you install solar panels, you're not going to make instant returns. It's going to take you time to understand how to use the energy around your usage. And it's the same for a heat pump as well. It's going to take time for you to understand how to use the controls, the thermostats, and they're very smart now. You can generate, control them on your phone, for example. So it's going to also take you time to understand how long does it take up to heat my house and so forth. So by all means, we think it's absolutely fine and fair for the customer to be able to come back to us 2 years, 3 years, even 4 years with questions. It's only right that they're still learning, and it's a learning curve for them. And it's also a learning curve for us. There shouldn't really be a time limit. The homeowner should be able to come back to you at any time if ask you the question, and you should be able to answer that and help him understand why it's working the way it is.
So Cathryn, this is a recurring thing that we see on the forums, is that people have had a subpar installation. They go back to their installer who's only too willing to come back and try and rectify the fault. The thing is that we are often seeing a lot of cowboy installers that lack the competence to be able to address that issue. So, they can keep coming back, every day for a month, but if they just lack the skills to actually fix that, what is the next step for that homeowner to take? Is it a matter of contacting HIES and seeing if there's an alternative to basically get around this?
Any HIES member, whether they're a HIES member now or they were a HIES member before, they can come through HIES. So it's got to be a HIES member. We can't accept complaints for installers that have never been a HIES member. So if your contract was signed during their period of membership with HIES, whether they're a member now or they're not, then we would accept that as a formal complaint. The certification bodies don't necessarily work like that. So we tend to say to customers, if you contact HIES, we can listen to what you've got to say. We can point you in the right direction. My team is quite technical. We understand how systems work, what the potential issues are. And with an air source heat pump, it's quite processy, I think. If someone says to you, well, it's not getting hot enough, or it can only be this, or this. There's going to be something far out that you've never thought of. But generally, if you do steps A, B, C, D, you've done it. That it can only be a handful of things. So we already sort of know what the issue is before we ring that installer. If the installer doesn't want to play ball or they're not agreeing with it, we can go as far to get an inspection done. And then that will bring up recommendations to put that installation right. Our process works over 3 stages. So we have what we class as an informal stage, which is days 1 to 8. I would ring Hassan up, for example, and say, we've got a complaint. This is what I need you to do. He's done it generally by the time we've contacted them. If we need an inspection or we need more information from the customer, lots of customers contact us and say it's not working. What do you mean? Physically not switching on? or it's just not working. That is really difficult to ascertain, A, whether there is a fault, and B, do we need to do anything about it? So it can be like pulling teeth sometimes to actually get the evidence you need, because I can't ring Hassan up or any other installer and say, Mrs. Smith says it's not working. What's not working? Well, she just says it's not working. That's no good for anybody, is it? So it's getting the evidence to be able to, A, just advise the customer, right, this is what you need to do. Customers have an unrealistic expectation sometimes of what they want and what they've actually bought, and it's trying to get them to work in that way because they are effective. Like you've said, I've got one, you've got one. If you work it the way that it's designed to work, it's a really good product to have.
So Hassan, you guys obviously with HIES, there's also a whole slew of certification bodies, NICEIC, NAPIT, HIES, OFTAC, Alexa, APHC. Are you guys registered with any certification bodies? And could you tell us what those certification bodies mean for heat pumps?
I think if I just list the most important ones, Mars. So for us as a company, I mean, or even for a homeowner who's looking to purchase a product off a company, this is the most important part. Because as you are aware, Mars, when it comes to things like accreditations, regulators, insurances, you're going to get what you pay for. Same as when you're buying home insurance for your house. They're going to ask you questions on there. Do you want this covered? Do you want boiler cover? Do you want this cover? So when you are starting to select all these things, the price is starting to inflate. And what that does is it gives you a premium insurance product. We as a company obviously can be a certified, or we can be kind of part of any regulated body. Like Cathryn mentioned, there's two main bodies that you need to be a part of in this industry. One is the Renewable Energy Consumer Code, and the second one is the HIES, Home Installation Energy Contractor Scheme. When you put them two next to each other, what you will find is RECC is probably your most basic insurance that doesn't really give you the added value that the homeowner would really need in the event of a claim or in the event of a dispute or a problem. HIES is probably the more premium version. It gives you a lot more. I have been a member of RECC when I first started. HIES were that diligent that they wouldn't let me become a member for the first 3 years of my trading. And they were really, really heavy in terms of checking us out, checking the company out, looking at bank statements really thoroughly during their due diligence. But when I wanted to become a member of RECC, I'd been trading 2 months and instantly they just sent me a certificate because I sent them a yearly fee. I can give you a live example of a homeowner that I know that had a leak when he went to complain to IWA, because that's who was his insurance warranty provider at the time. The IWA regulator told the customer that we are not getting involved until REST goes bust. That's the only time we would even help you or assist you. The poor homeowner was then left to have to deal with the stress and have to go through the headache and all the trauma of having to potentially take REST to court or potentially have to dispute with REST because they didn't have a protection like HIES and a dispute resolution service, access to ombudsman, and all the premium values that HIES brings to the table. That's the first thing. The second most important accreditation I would probably say is EPVS, Energy Performance Validation Scheme. If you are purchasing any renewable energy product and it's not been checked by EPVS, then what you see on that paper, there is no guarantees. And the chances of that equation, i.e. the amount of kilowatt hours it's going to use or the heat pump's going to use a year or what it's going to cost you, the chances of that being wrong is very, very high because there is no one backing it. There's no regulator behind it. Apart from that, you've got your NAPIT, which is your MCS, which you have to be able to do what we do in order to issue the MCS certificates. But in terms of, I would say, the support that they give you, probably nothing at all. Any issues with regards to complaints, they probably don't assist as much as anyone else does.
Does an installer, irrespective of whether it's a company or whether it's just the one-man band that installs heat pumps, is it compulsory for them to be part of a consumer code?
No. So if they are installing where they want to get the buzz vouchers, so if the customer wants to get the incentive from the government, then yes, they are. But any plumber can install an air source heat pump. So you can go purchase one from Plumb Centre and just have your plumber install it. I think you'll tend to find that most would be, because if there's a chance of a customer spending £15,000 out of the bank and getting £7,500 back from the government, they're going to want to go for that option, aren't they? So for that instance, yes, they have to have a CORDA, they have to have MCS, they have to have the certification body to be able to get that. Same with Eco4 installers would have to have all of that. For just a one-man band that just installs it part of his plumbing, can't think off the top of my head that a customer's come to us where they've not used an MCS installer for it, whether they're HIES or RECC. But no, they don't need to be. I don't think it's very common.
Do you need help understanding your heat pump? Then pick up a copy of From Zero to Heat Pump Hero, an essential guide offering practical advice and basic instructions for new heat pump owners to maximize system efficiency. Available in print and on Kindle, link in the description. And in terms of realistic compensation, so let's say, for example, a homeowner has had a subpar installation, they're not pleased with it. What kind of realistic expectations can they have in terms of compensation? Because I think a lot of times people go, well, this has been terribly installed. I'm going to want, £4,000 back from this installer because I just think that this is a horrible installation that hasn't lived up to my expectations. What kind of monetary compensation can homeowners potentially expect? And I appreciate there's going to be different cases for different things, but in terms of managing homeowners' expectations, what is that financial compensation look like?
That would be on a case-by-case basis, but I suppose the easiest way to say it, just because you want it doesn't mean you're entitled to it. We get lots, in fact, I'd say 95% of our complaints will have a compensation element in it. Now, don't get me wrong, we've had customers that have been left in a terrible state. We equally get lots of customers to say, well, it was an hour late. The customer's got to be able to quantify those losses. So what have they actually, monetary loss? If there is no monetary loss and it's just the fact that they wasted half a day or there was a failed appointment, that's just life. Sometimes things go wrong, don't they, in everyday life? It's what might cause a problem for you, might not bother me. Okay, you were 2 hours late, wasn't great, but am I going to chase you for compensation? No, I'm not. Am I going to put a bad review on? No, I'm not. On the other side of the coin, if you've gone out to do an installation, if you left that customer without heating and hot water in December for a month, then yeah, they very much are entitled to some compensation. Again, it's about quantifying those losses. If they've had to get additional heating, drive 10 miles to use the mum's shower and things like that. But most companies are pretty good like that. They recognise that. We're not saying, actually, you should be giving Joe Blogg some compensation. That company has already offered it. Sometimes it is just an apology. Got to also look at it. If a business gave compensation every time something went wrong, there'd be no businesses trading. We would always look to the compensation element, but not for minor things. And it's about managing that customer's expectations sometimes.
Hassan, could you explain something to me? So we've got one case on the forums where there's a gentleman, I think they're up in Scotland. They've had a real nightmare with their heat pump and they've lodged their complaints through the NICEIC, and this has been going on for 4 years now, where they've just been stuck in this loop between NICEIC and I think it's MCS. What is the role of the NICEIC?
The NICEIC is an electrical body. They're just there as a guidance body to give, electrical contractors and installers a guidance to what rules should be followed in terms of, how installations should be carried out. I've been in this situation. I mean, we spoke about it earlier on where, there's so many different governing bodies. Customers can get confused. Who should they go to first? What is the problem regarding or the complaint regarding? The customer would potentially complain to MCS because MCS is part of NICEIC and also NAPIT as well. Because of the way that they are designed, they will not arrange visits to go out and visit customers. I don't think that they charge for any of these things, so they don't offer these services. So I don't think that they would even provide a dispute resolution service or a service where they would be able to mediate the issues. Could I ask you a little bit more clarification on your case? Because it's been going on for 4 years. Why is it taking so long?
It's really interesting that you should ask that, because now that you've said that, it's the electrical body, he's actually got problems with the actual plumbing on his system that leads up to the heat pump. It's a plumbing issue. So that's why I was confused as to why NICEIC is actually involved in this if it's a plumbing issue.
I would be the same, really. When we have any complaints, what we tend to find is that when a customer goes to, obviously we're regulated by NAPIT, some customers are NICEIC, but what we find is that generally the complaint is more that they just want us to start communicating with the customer and deal with it, right? They do not want to get involved. That's what we kind of find from them. So it's more of a, we've received this complaint from this customer, so you need to contact him within 5 days and deal with it. We don't want to know anything else and let us know what the outcome is. And basically that's how they deal with it. At any point, they've never agreed to send someone out. They've never said to us, oh, we're going to send a team out to go and inspect this job and audit this job and check if you've done the correct job. I've never come across that. I've never witnessed that for myself or any installations that we've done that we've had any issues with or any complaints with. So I think personally, obviously from my experience, this customer's gone to a complete wrong body for his complaint. Who was his consumer code?
This is why I asked Cathryn, does everybody have to have a consumer code? And I don't think he's actually got one. He then complains to the MCS.
Sorry, Mars. I don't think you can get an MCS without a consumer code.
No, it's a chicken and the egg. So NIC, NAPIT, APHC do all the same thing. So I know NIC, EIC, when you look at it, everybody thinks it's just for electricians. It's not. They certify the same things. They will say that you are competent to install air source heat pumps, competent to install batteries. So you've got to have that, and then that lists against what your MCS accreditation is. So if he's managed to raise a complaint with MCS and NIC, I think it stands to reason that they must have had a consumer code. And like I said before, I can't speak for RECC, but I would expect the MOU that we have UCAS is all the same. So if the contract was signed during RECC's period of membership, then we would expect RECC to deal with it, and likewise HIES. That would be an interesting one to get a bit more information on, to see what is signed, who he's signed it with, and where he's up to.
What makes this really interesting for me as a case, in light of everything that you guys have actually said, which is why this is just such a valuable conversation, is that they've clearly gone to MCS with their complaints, where they should have completely bypassed that and gone either directly to HIES or RECC if this guy is in fact registered with a consumer code, and completely removed all of this, because the latest update that I actually had from him was a couple of months ago. But NIC, EIC did send an inspector out who did, for whatever reason, agree with him, saying that there's an issue with the actual plumbing leading up to the heat pump, why they even got involved in that and why they've okayed that. And basically that's where it's been left again now, because obviously I'm guessing NIC, EIC can't actually force the installer to go back and fix plumbing stuff.
No, they can't. So NIC can only be involved if they are still a member. Let's just go with the Joe Bloggs. So Joe Bloggs Installations is a member of NIC. This customer has got this issue with his air source heat pump. He's raised that complaint with NIC because Joe Bloggs is still a member of NIC. I would expect that NIC have done an inspection on that now, because that is a big issue. So if the pipework running to the air source heat pump and to the cylinder is not the right size and it restricts the flow rates, he gets all sorts of problems. Let's just say, for example, they've done this inspection, they've identified that this needs changing, that needs changing. They would expect that installer to do it, and the complaint wouldn't be closed by NIC until the installer had done it. The issue you've got is, if for whatever reason NIC suspend that member or expel that member during that time, that complaint is closed because they don't have an ADR provision. But if they've gone that far, I would have expected that member of NIC to have a code, or to at least have had a code when the contract was signed. So there is another avenue, but I'd need more information from you to point this customer in the right place. So it might be that this installer hasn't worked with NIC and they've got rid of him off their membership, in which case they'll close the complaint because there's nothing else they can do with it. But they usually are pretty good at saying, right, you need to pick it up with HIES, you need to pick it up with RECC. There seems to be a part of the story that's not there.
There's actually a very similar case to the one that I've actually just described. What happened there is that the installer did get basically scrapped off the books of that particular certification body. And then the homeowner goes, well, how does this help me? You guys have scrapped him. He's no longer on your books. How does that help me as the homeowner and the consumer now? You know, the fact that now I've got zero recourse to be able to deal with this particular installer.
Yeah, it's still got the recourse. So we would then, this is always a bit of what I would class as a black hole. There is a bit of a document that flies about where, to make it easier, and it's available on the MCS website, about which scheme. It can be quite confusing. I've not got my DNO, for example. Where do I go? So this is just a simple little spreadsheet that goes, right, you'd go to your certification body, or you could go to your code. Some is dual, where you can go to 3 or 4 different places depending on what you need. For HIES, we do go out of our lane a little bit, but sometimes it's just as easy for me to ring up Hassan than it is for the customer to wait 4 weeks in a process at NIC and do it that way. There should be another step. If you're installing with MCS and NIC or NAPIT, then you've also got a code, or you had a code when that contract was signed, and that doesn't matter. Even if we've expelled you or you've stopped needing a code, we've still got an obligation to look at that complaint in exactly the same way. Likewise, if you were installing air source heat pumps as an installer and you decided to pull out of that market, but you've give 10-year insurance back guarantees, you're still bound by HIES scheme rules and RECCs for the lifetime as that. So you couldn't go around to us and say, well, actually, I'm not installing solar anymore. That doesn't matter. You've got that complaint from 2016 that you're still bound with until 2026 or whatever it is that you've decided to do. Because the customer's still, even if it's only got a 2-year workmanship warranty, they're still bound by statutory rights for 6 years. The workmanship warranty might have expired, but if we've now discovered that he's got a leak in his roof because you've drilled through his tiles, to say, well, your 2-year workmanship warranty is expired is irrelevant. It's in addition to your statutory rights.
So Hassan, you said something quite interesting a short while ago. You said that there's some sort of interrelationship between NIC, NAPIT, and MCS. Could you elaborate on that?
I mean, obviously, the MCS certification body is governed by NICEIC and NAPIT as well. So you have to be a member of them to be a part of MCS. And we also know that IWA, the insurance warranty provider, is obviously linked with MCS as well. So when you're obviously undertaking or registering an MCS certificate, you can purchase an insurance-backed guarantee for a customer through the MCS portal, which obviously gives the customer a code as well, because I know that RECC are also working with MCS directly as well. So I mean, even this customer that you was on about, 100% he will have a consumer code, because you cannot be a member of MCS without a code. It's part of their, legal requirements to do that.
Have you got questions about heat pumps and renewables? Then head over to the forums at Renewable Heating Hub for practical advice from thousands of fellow homeowners and heat pump users. So, Cathryn, in the event that communication does break down between an installer and a homeowner, and HIES is asked to step in, what kind of time frame can the homeowner expect from HIES to try and initiate some sort of resolution to start happening?
We have 3 stages to our ADR process. Stages 1 to 8 is what we class as informal. Now, in HIES, the average time to close a complaint is 3 days, 3.8 days, maybe, I think it is. We resolve about 96% of complaints in-house without the need to escalate to an ombudsman or court. We tend to contact customers on the same day as we receive the complaint, so we always contact the customer first, depending on what the issue is. So if this is something quite simple where, let's go with no heating, I've got no heating and I've got this error code, that would be a quick call to the installer. So Mrs. Smith hasn't got any heating, this is the error code that's coming up, that heating code means this. Quite often that can just be resetting on they can talk them through that on the control panel. We would expect for something like that it's dealt with quite quickly. So it all depends on how quick we get hold of a customer and get the evidence that we need, and likewise with the installer, because we can't contact the installer with half a story, so we're reliant on that. We get a lot of customers ring up to make a complaint and then go on holiday. That can do it, but as a general rule, we are quite quick. A lot of our complaints are resolved in first stage unless we need to do an inspection or we can't get hold of some evidence. The customer might need to download some bits and pieces. So yeah, most of our complaints are resolved within about 4 days.
What would you advise a homeowner that has gone with a one-man band where they have had a subpar installation where there isn't really a proper process to follow? Is it as simple as just sending them an email?
Oh, it's actually quite hard, to be honest. It's unfortunate that the homeowner's put himself in that situation in the first place. We're in 2025. There's so much information available online. You can go on reputable websites like your own website, plenty of other websites that inform homeowners of what to do before they purchase these products. It's really hard for a homeowner and very stressful, I can imagine, when they're in a situation like this because they're dealing with a one-man band company who's probably not got much trading history, and the chances of the homeowner potentially getting this problem resolved is quite slim. You could send them an email, you can send a letter. My advice would be go straight to court.
I think the biggest takeaway from what you've said today, Hassan, is that I often go onto a lot of installer websites and you kind of scroll towards the bottom and there's like 14 logos along the bottom. Not all of them clearly carry the same amount of weight. You mentioned that EPVS and HIES are 2 logos you should definitely look out for. Are there any others that you just think, well, these guys are legit? Are there any other organizations that you could lump together with those?
A company being a member of the Financial Conduct Authority shows that they obviously operate and sell finance products or products on finance. There's a big thing about purchasing a renewable product on finance, especially now more than ever due to the background history of things and bad subpar installations and so forth. And we actually really push this to a lot of our customers, and we explain to them that it's all good having these accreditations like HIES, like EPVS and these things in place, and also a strong installer to back you in the event that something does go wrong. If you are able to purchase a product where you can have a company, or most importantly a bank, that's worth millions, if not billions, sat there that's funding this product for you, and for the security and the peace of mind that you're going to get from this, it's worth going for it. I would probably say that is your last one. It's the Section 75. It's the fact that if you was offering any sort of a regulated finance plan on these products as a customer, that would be your full security on purchasing any product from any company.
So, Cathryn, I've seen advice in the past, and this touches on what Hassan just said. Put a portion of that purchase on your credit card because you get that additional security. Is that good advice?
Very much so. I say this to customers all the time. My mum was a non-believer of finance, so she wouldn't buy anything that she couldn't afford to buy. That is such a wrong way of looking for something. I always use the sofa analogy. If you go to buy a sofa from DFS and they offer you the finance, take the finance, pay it off the following day if that's what you want to do. You've got 6 years unfettered protection. If you get the option of paying some of it on your credit card, just stick a couple of £100 on your credit card. The whole contract value is then covered under Section 75 should you need it. For me, it's just an extra level of protection in place. But it's just maybe fair to mention at this point, we're talking a lot about subpar installations. For HIES, I can't speak for anybody else. We've had from January to October over 18,000 registrations for air source heat pump on our portal. We've only had 80 complaints regarding air source heat pump. It's less than 0.5%. Most of those were closed on the same day they were opened, which usually signifies that either the installer's already on it or B, there wasn't a complaint in the first place. We only tend to focus on, oh my God, there's been loads of complaints. There hasn't really. The volumes that we're seeing coming through across Eco, Able to Pay market, that is a really low percentage of people that actually have an issue, and these are not running on forever.
It goes back to what we said, or what I said earlier on. You're going to get what you pay for when it comes to insurance, or, regulators giving you, the consumer, the service that you deserve. Like I said earlier on, HIES didn't accept me for at least 3 years after trading. There is a reason why they're not getting as many complaints, because what I have personally seen is that from myself and, that I do know other companies that have HIES or other HIES members, HIES will only undertake members that they feel that are really good. And because of the audit process that HIES has in place, it is very much important that HIES only has premium, really good, high quality installers, which then ensures the homeowner that they're dealing with the right people, that they've been checked, that they've been audited, and most importantly, that they've been backed by HIES, and there's a reason why.
So as a closing point from you, Hassan, what advice would you give to homeowners to put themselves in the strongest possible situation so they don't have to deal with any dispute resolution or any dramas going forward?
The first thing that for the homeowners, which is very, very important, is to make sure that they do their research on what they're buying. They're just going to be buying something blindfoldedly and believing in what someone is saying because they're sitting in front of them, then that's where they're going to go wrong in the first place. Most importantly, the manufacturers behind these products. So it's important that when they are looking to buy a heat pump, for example, they've actually done research on who is manufacturing this product. What are their warranty processes like? Are they actually there? Do they honor their warranties? Do they find a reason to not honor their warranties? What's the actual quality of the product like? What's the reliability like? If I'm going to buy a heat pump, is there a chance that I'm going to constantly have parts that are going to go wrong? How long is the warranty on the products? What do I get warranty and labor on the product is covered, or is it just the warranty and I have to pay for the labor, which then means that if it keeps going wrong, I'll have to keep forking out money every single time to put it right. That is the number one step. And then you would then go into making due diligence on understanding and looking at reviews of the products. Most importantly, the reviews of the installer that you're looking to choose. I would go in as far as potentially speaking to the installers and asking for referrals or for customers that they've done installations on for the exact same product that you could speak to make sure that you can get good, honest feedback from real life people of exactly what this product does for them, and to make sure that that gives you the peace of mind that you're looking for. Back to the insurance levels that you're going to get with the installer that you're dealing with. Are you going to get a premium insurance that, you've got complete peace of mind? Has someone like EPVS actually checked these figures? Have they actually checked the contract that the installer has put together? Have they actually checked the terms and conditions of the installer's contract? These are things where the majority of homeowners are not savvy about. These are the why these regulators are there for that reason, is to protect homeowners and to be able to do these validations and checks. For the homeowner, it's important that they're choosing the right products. They're making sure that they've done the vetting on the installer and the workmanship of the installer and spoken to other customers to make sure that they're happy with the outcome. What happens when you cut costs, you end up cutting corners, and that's exactly what seems to happen in this industry. And not just in this industry. I mean, we do a lot of solar as well. So we find the same thing when it comes to solar, is that, there's a lot of cowboy entrants in the market, especially in the last 2 years, where the energy crisis has happened, the energy bills have skyrocketed, a lot of cowboys have entered in. Customers are just seeing this price, and where they're seeing a price, they're getting blindfolded by everything else around it. They're not doing proper due diligence. They're not seeing that the company's been trading less than a year. They're not checking whether the company's got enough money in the bank, that if they ended up getting a roof leak or something collapsed or something stopped working, do they even have a chance to go and get something back from the installer? No. These are all things that the homeowner should be really looking into, no matter what product they're looking to purchase for their home. If you can get any added value or any added protection onto your system or onto your purchase, no matter what you're going to do. But most importantly, the protection will only be valid if the installer is still there and it's strong. It's all good having insurance, but if the insurance haven't got anywhere to go and get the money from to get you, compensated, then what's the likelihood that the insurance will ever pay out? Number one thing is to make sure that, you pick the right company, you check everything that I've said, and if it's cheap for a reason.
You're listening to the Renewable Heating Hub Homeowners Q&A, empowering consumers with the knowledge they need to make smarter heating choices. So we hope that today's episode has shed light on the steps you can take if you're dealing with a subpar heat pump installation. Remember, there are resources available to help you from organizations like HIES, who ensure consumer protection, to experienced installers committed to resolving issues and building trust with homeowners. A huge thank you to Cathryn Wolfenden and Hassan Abdalla for sharing their experience and for helping homeowners feel confident in addressing these challenges. And a special thank you to HIES for sponsoring this episode. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, stay informed and empowered with Homeowners Q&A. Until next time, stay warm, stay green, stay tuned. Goodbye.